I'm sorry, but training has been intense. My name is Matthew Kroll.
Y tú también. Tú también es puertos. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Roma.
And I apologize in advance to any Spanish listeners for my terrible pronunciation.
Was that Spanish for you didn't know how to say it?
Yes, that was. Yeah, these are the only. Was that Family Guy joke? These are the only phrases I know.
Yeah, I guess. Look, I mean, you made the attempt. You were brave. You were braver than I.
I felt it was important to try at least.
Sure.
And
I felt it was important to quote the most dickish person in this movie. So I mean, we all had our drives.
Yeah, we all had our drives, and this was a fun drive for me. Hey, no emails this week, which is kind of sad.
Aw.
But
what happened, everybody?
Yeah.
Are you dealing with your families?
Are you doing Christmas stuff?
Are you doing holiday cheer?
Yeah, we're not good enough for you?
I mean, it's fine. I'm just literally wearing a Krampus sweater right now. That's all fine.
Yeah, it's an early Sunday morning. We're out here for you guys, and are you here for us?
We're out in these streets. No, we understand. We know this time is incredibly busy. I'm impressed that we found time to not only watch a film but come and talk about it.
And yes, and if you do want to email us, if you do want to get
this guilt trip worked at all,
if you do want to get out here on these streets for us, email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod or don't forget those iTunes reviews.
Oh, some stars. You know what's a lovely Christmas gift?
Yeah.
Stars.
Oh, yeah.
You just give us as many stars on iTunes as you possibly can afford. We don't want to put you into poverty.
I'm just saying Kendrick Lamar gave us all the stars, so why not?
That was a great song.
It was a great song, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It is coming. It's coming up to the end of the year, and I'm going through my Spotify list, and most of it is movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
All the stars did appear quite a lot.
Of course. Side note, I feel like Black Panther came out 3 years ago.
It was the start of this year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be a quick detour before we get into Roma.
Sure.
Black Panther at the Oscars. Thoughts?
It needs to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
I do not think so.
I know you don't. But it's... it is going to turn into a more of a my thoughts on the Oscars as opposed to because there's the Kevin Hart thing, and then there's
the Kevin Hart thing,
and then there's no. Then they're thinking about not having a host. Where are they right now?
They're thinking about us for one. They should be.
Well, they can't afford us.
Apparently they're thinking about not having a host at all.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's the only reason.
They don't understand humans anymore. Like there's.
I feel like the Kevin Hart thing is going to come up in our special episode, which we've long promised on separating art from artists.
Yeah.
But
we don't have to get into it now. Sorry,
I sidetracked you twice there. But Black Panther at the Oscars.
I think it's important that it's going to transition to a little bit different. But let's start there. I think it's important that Black Panther goes to the Oscars. But I think it's important for a couple different reasons. One, I think it mixes sort of the superhero genre, which I always feel like has merit in many ways that, I would say the Academy might not. But also, you're taking something that is a cultural phenomenon, superhero movies, and making something about, pointed at or about another culture that doesn't normally get that amount of shine in this world. And you can't describe the release of Black Panther as anything other than triumphant. Like it did work. It did great stuff. It was a great film. It was entertainment. It was exactly what it should have been with good messages and everything. And I was just like, there's no reason this film shouldn't be at the Oscars other than if any superhero movie has a chance, Black Panther has a chance.
What about Into the Spider-Verse, which I hear is phenomenal, and I haven't seen yet.
I know that's next week. Roma won out this week. Yeah. The coin toss was intense.
The only thing about what you're saying is, and I don't disagree about the tenor of what you're saying, but the only thing I think you're. And you like the movie, so that's that's different.
You're not arguing that I like the movie. I understand.
Yeah. But the only difference there is that your argument for it, and a lot of people's argument for it, seems to be that superhero movies deserve to be there, and I don't think that's a great argument. I think if it was a great movie, and I think it's an okay movie, then don't get me wrong. Then I could totally agree with it. Like I 100% back Logan at the Oscars. Right. It's got nothing to do with it. To me, it has to do with the quality of the movie.
Sure.
And I think, to me, Black Panther is like an okay movie.
This is the thing.
And I don't think it should be there just because it's Black Panther.
No. And I don't think so either. I think, though, that the Oscars is... I mean, its bread and butter is kind of being out of touch, right? Like, if we're looking out of touch of the movie-going masses, I'm not talking about people that spend every week for the better part of 3 years discussing film into microphones in an apartment that's soundproofed now. I'm talking about, like, you know, people that just go to the movies, take their family, their kids, just people that go as pure entertainment. Like, the Oscars don't and I'm not saying they have to. Yeah. But the Oscars don't represent them really at all. There's a way that there's something good that the Oscars does that it's sort of like, because of the push and the buzz and trying to get it, it gets different, like kind of your point back in the day about like superhero saturation or like the Disneyfication, sort of like not leaving room for other films, smaller films that need to, like, that should take up the space as well, which I agree. I think the Oscars, the great thing about it is it gets more people into the discussion of like, oh, well, did you see Roma? Did you see that? Like, right. Because when more people talk about it, people will go out and find it as opposed to just being fed what's fed to them on cable commercials.
Right.
The issue I have is I don't want the Oscar-ish movies to go away.
Right.
I want everything to be in there. I want them to kind of have, I mean, their idea of what was the category they had and they took away?
Best popular film.
Like, that's a little bit trite.
Yeah.
But like, there's no reason Black Panther couldn't be nominated with any of the other Oscar films in categories that made sense.
Right.
And I don't want, like, and the other thing is it would elevate the good. I'm just going to use superheroes, but it's mainly like big budget, sort of blockbustery, schlocky. I would say schlock more, whatever.
Yeah.
It would elevate the really good stuff, more like Logan, giving Logan a chance.
Yeah.
To shine in that category, and would kind of even shine more of a bad light on the garbage. Like, it would make the whole thing better.
Right. Yeah, and look, I don't disagree with you in that the Oscars are kind of nebulous in terms of what they mean. You know, like I remember growing up and Dances with Wolves won Best Picture.
Yes.
Right? And so that night, because Dances with Wolves won Best Picture, my brother took me out to see Dances with Wolves.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it was like, oh, I wouldn't have, and I probably wouldn't have gone to see Dances with Wolves, or I wouldn't have even asked for it, but it was suddenly like, everyone should go see this movie.
There's an inadvertent effect that I think it's weird. A lot of bad, I'm going to call the Oscars bad, but a lot of bad things in life have sort of like an inadverse good side effect that's like helpful 30% of the 100%. Like it happens, and they think that's a great counterpoint to it. It's just, I mean, at the end of the day, the Oscars is just about a money circle.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, if Black Panther had been released, you know, closer to November or December, then I think its chances of being in the Oscar would be really high.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it, and I guess we'll do an Oscar episode like we did last year as well. The more I've walked away from Black Panther, the less enamored. And I actually did rewatch it because it's on Netflix, and I kind of just skimmed through it. And it's like, to me, it's one of those things where when you completely remove it from like the cultural import of having that movie appear on screens and just watch it as a movie, it's like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is for me. It's okay. I don't get excited about it.
Right. I guess my counterpoint to that is, I have two minor ones, and that'll just sort of be it for me. I disagree with that. I watch it and I am excited every time I see it if I'm in the mood for that kind of movie.
Yeah.
And two, I don't think it's possible to separate it from that cultural touch point. Like, it's a film that did a thing that, I won't say first. It didn't do the thing first. It popularized the thing first, or it. What I hope is it opened the gates more to more diverse films in a genre that I love.
Right, but there are diverse films outside of that genre. It's
of
not
course,
like,
I'm talking about, but in that genre, there really weren't. I mean, you had a couple sort of things throughout. I mean, Blade, of course, but Blade didn't get, because it was a rated R, not aimed at the fun for the whole family crowd.
Yeah,
didn't get that sort of that the same level of push that Black Panther did.
No, of course not. No.
So, but I'm just saying, I like it because it's now like, hey, Hollywood, whoever the hell. This makes money, let's make more of this, or things that aren't just white dude that's grumbly about getting powers at one point. Like, I don't know. It was a breath of fresh air, and I really appreciate it. I want it to be recognized for doing what it's doing. More importantly, I want, not necessarily even at the Oscars, right? Because look, I don't ever tells people how to run their own clubs,
right?
But like, there's other awards too. It's just, the Oscars is as I'm getting older and more cynical. It's a circle of money passing between very rich people to advertise their films, and it inadvertently
Yeah.
lets people that might not find great film find them, and that's a great side effect.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We'll jump off the Oscars for a bit. I think it's an interesting conversation that we will continue.
Yeah.
But if you have an opinion about this, obviously, email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter. Their plug finished.
Never. Always plug it.
We'll move on to Roma in just one second. But there was a really interesting story this week that I thought was fun about the Marvel universe, and which had to do with a female director who directed a film this year called Zama. I think her name is Marcel Lutricia. I completely butchered that. I apologize. I'm just trying to find her name right now.
Yeah.
But she talked about how she was called up to direct a Marvel movie, or to have a meeting at least to direct a Marvel movie. Sure. And she is an independent filmmaker, not an independent filmmaker, a very successful filmmaker, critically acclaimed filmmaker. And she said the thing that was difficult for her was to understand was that basically what they said to her was, we need a woman who can understand, who can create, whose main focus is on the Black Panther character. And they were like, and she also said, oh, but I also want to direct the action in a certain way. And they're like, no, we'll do, don't worry about the action at all. We'll take care of that.
Really?
Yeah. And that was why she said
she went in for Black Panther.
She went in for Black Widow.
Black Widow.
Yeah. And again, this is all hearsay, and I
mean, it sounds right up the alley of
this
world.
And basically she was like, she couldn't understand why they wanted to offer it to a filmmaker like her, someone who's made her name, for making very, very independent auteur-driven films, but basically would take that away. She wasn't able to kind of control the movie. She was basically told, we need a woman who will focus on the womanhood, but don't worry about everything else. We'll take care of that.
I mean, it sounds like two different things you said, though, and I don't know which one that the article said. One is very hyper insulting and fucking terrible, if true, about just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like, we need a woman in name only, right? Like, that's really
no. I don't think it was that. I think it was just. I think the thing that's tricky there is the suggestion that you have to be a woman in order to understand a woman's issue.
I think it's helpful.
It's helpful. It's entirely helpful, and they have a problem that they're trying to address. But it just here she is, Lucretia Martel.
Okay.
And basically it was the don't worry about the action scenes was the kind of the thing, and it was like if you compare that to Christopher Nolan, for example, always directs his own action sequences.
Sure.
Doesn't use a second unit.
But now, this is my question. This has nothing to do with the sex of the director, or the gender. But has she done action before?
No, but she's never made an action film before.
I know. So here's the thing. Do I think it's right for them to do that, and especially in the way it sounds like it's presented? No, it's insulting and terrible, and why are you doing that?
Yeah.
At the same time, what I would hope, for instance, is if they really wanted this director, they'd be like, hey, how comfortable are you with action scenes? It doesn't seem like you've done a bunch. We have an amazing team that can help you out and make sure that we can sort of mesh your vision with our vision and try to
I'm sure it was more akin to that.
I don't mind so much, only because I don't mind that act. It's what's behind that act. Why is it? Because they just want a steadier hand in the action stuff, or is it because they're like, we just need to check that box? Like,
I get the impression it's that second one.
That sucks.
Because if you look at the action sequences in Marvel movies, and I think most of the directors of Marvel movies say this as well, is that they don't handle the bigger set pieces. Like, they might, they'll come in and kind of give it a vision, but overall it will kind of be handed off to second unit directors.
It does keep it consistent then.
It keeps it consistent, but it also keeps it uninteresting. Like, imagine, so the thing here is like, although this is, I'm going to counterpoint this right away. I was thinking of Chan-wook Park's Old Boy and the hallway fight scene, and that the single take fight scene. It's like, is that something you would necessarily see in a Marvel movie? And I just remembered in Black Panther, there's a single take sort of starting action scene, but it didn't quite feel. And
you want to get even into the TV universe? Daredevil did. It's an amazing version of that. There is artistry there. It's just it does get lost. I think
I'm not critiquing, like how Marvel runs their business. I think they have an extraordinary business model.
You think they're making money?
I think they're making money, and I think they know a thing or two about how to create a product.
But this does sound like an insulting thing a Hollywood executive would say.
Yeah, well, who knows. Anyway, moving on to not an insulting thing that a Hollywood executive would probably pitch in a studio to make money.
I'm rolling with it.
Is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. Now, last week, we were talking about the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and we got hung up on one phrase. I think both of us got hung up on one phrase, and that was pilgrimage.
Okay.
We were talking about the phrase pilgrims and pilgrimage, and we were trying to figure out, like, what is the origin of that phrase? What is the etymology of that phrase?
Yep.
And how does it come about? And we both kind of, agree that pilgrimage is a religious journey, or a journey that has some kind of religious component to it. It is a homage to a spiritual component of some kind.
By definition, I was forced to agree. I always thought of it as just doesn't have to be religious. This has to be some sort of journey that changes you.
I think the broader explanation would have to do with spirituality.
But in the dictionary, it does say it has to do with a religious journey.
So this week, and I said this to you up front in our side conversations. I was like, hey, Roma, we are absolutely doing.
Yeah.
There's no.
This is your Infinity War.
This is my. It literally is my Infinity War. It is the movie I was most excited about this year. It is a movie that I was like, I know it's coming on Netflix. I know everyone has the opportunity to see it on December 14th. But I am going to make a pilgrimage.
Yep.
No, I'm going to go to the movie theaters, and the act of going to the movie theaters for me was like a pilgrimage, because I was like, I said to my wife, I was like, look, you can come to this movie if you want to. I absolutely would love you to come. I just want you to know we're going to go find the movie theater in New York City that's playing in Dolby Atmos. It happens to be on 11th Street, which means the subway only goes to like 8th, which means you have to walk from 8th to 11th in wintertime.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm doing that, and there is no question about it. Like, if you want to join me on this journey, please do. But this is an important thing for me, so like, don't be opening that bag of popcorn during the movie or anything like that. I was like
you laid it down.
Well, I was just like, this is important to me. Yeah. And it was akin to a spiritual journey. Now, that's because it is Alfonso Cuarón.
Wait, hold on. Did she go?
Fuck no. she was like, you know what? I'll just watch it on TV. I'm good.
She and I have a lot in common.
It was funny because I offered the same thing. I was like, I wanted them to come, obviously, but I just wanted them to know this was really important to me.
Yeah, I think you asked me to go at one point, but we never got to the part of the conversation where you would have laid down all these ground rules.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm an asshole.
No, disagree. Look, if you did that for every film, which you absolutely do not, that would be an asshole move. But when you have a select things that are important to you that you want to go see in a certain way and experience, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's good.
I think I came off as an asshole to my wife. But anyway.
All right, good save.
But anyway, I paid the $18 it cost to go see this movie in Dolby Atmos. There was only one theater in New York that was playing it in Dolby Atmos. And that was, the reason was, it's Alfonso Cuarón. Now, I think, in my mind, the reason this makes this an exciting year is last week or 2 weeks ago, the LA Film Critics Circle had their award ceremony, and Alfonso Cuarón's Roma won Best Picture. Mm-hmm. He's one of the premier filmmakers working today. Hirokazu Koreeda won Best Foreign Film alongside Lee Chang-dong. Those are, like, that triptych of filmmakers are filmmakers that have all created works of art or works of film that changed my life. So these are not just movies that I think are good. These are movies that profoundly affected my life in terms of, like, changing the way I thought about life as a filmmaker and changing the way I just thought about life in general. And to me, for Alfonso Cuarón, the film that did that was Y Tu Mamá También. When I walked out of Y Tu Mamá También, I staggered out of the movie. I kind of sat there. I couldn't quite figure out what had happened, but I knew my life had kind of changed. And that was a movie that profoundly affects me, to the point where I'm sometimes scared to watch that movie.
You know what I mean? Yep, because you're worried that feeling you had not necessarily will change, but will be different, and you hold that feeling in such high regard. It's
not that. What it is, because I do rewatch it. Well, what it is for me is that watching that movie is such a spiritual journey for me. It's kind of like going to see Roma, where I want all the pieces to be exactly right when I sit down to watch it. Like other movies that I love, that I think are brilliant, that I could rewatch, I can just throw on, I can put in the background.
Right.
With Y Tu Mamá También, I'm like, I want everything quiet. I want to sit down. I don't want anything to interrupt me. I want to go on that journey one more time. So at any rate, I guess all of that preamble.
Wow. Hey, so what'd you think of it?
See, I haven't talked about Roma yet. We haven't actually even talked about Roma yet. But before we get to the Roma part, I just want to say this. I went and saw this in Dolby Atmos.
Yep.
Saw this in an HDR projection at the Landmark at 57th Street.
Oh, HDR's got to be great on that thing.
It's also a theater I've never been to. I've never been to the theater. The projection was amazing. The sound was amazing. And here's the thing. In the last few years, filmmakers have been experimenting with all ways to try and create immersive experiences. So we've got 3D, we've got high frame rate, we've got VR as an example. None of those have come close to how immersive this is an experience watching this film in Dolby Atmos. It is the most incredibly immersive film-going experience I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, it's the picture is one thing. It's the sound that people are forgetting about, and the level of work that was done in the sound mix with this film in Dolby Atmos is to the point where, like, I was, you'd hear voices going on, and I would turn around thinking, oh, someone's talking in the back of the theater, and then realize, oh, that's actually just the sound mix. And there's one scene in this movie where I was holding my breath because I felt like I was in the scene.
Right.
So please, I know it's available on Netflix, and you can see it in Netflix right now. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have seen it. But if you can see this movie in a movie theater that has Dolby Atmos, you must do it, because that is the most immersive movie-going experience I've ever had.
Have you watched it at home since you went?
I have. I've seen this movie twice.
Okay, so now I'm going to start saying, and I 100% agree. I think when a film is done correctly, like this one was, the sound, like it transports you to wherever the film is taking you. I was shocked. Half of my notes are about the sound.
It's extraordinary, right?
And this is, I mean, my setup, I have the projector, of course, so that the image is really nice, but something I've always kind of skirted around is sound stuff. I have decent speakers. They're old. It's a 5.1 system. It's not balanced exactly to where I sit. Like, I know all the things that are wrong with it.
Yeah.
But that having been said, yeah, your chair squeaks, by the way. We switched chairs this week. I got a new chair, so Shahir got my old chair.
I actually just thought it was your cat. I thought it was
no,
Zoe.
it does sound like Zoe, but when you twist in that chair, it's like, but no, back to Roma and watching it at home. On my standard 5.1 old ass sound system was, and it's funny, you had an immersive experience. I had this is incredibly impressive experience. Like, I was shocked how good the Netflix mix was.
Yeah.
And I was like, because there would be times where, like, you'd hear a siren. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a New York siren. I was like, oh, that's behind. I'm like, my sound system has never worked this good.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked.
And it's amazing because you think that experience of surround sound is usually reserved for action movies.
Yeah.
Like something whizzes past you or something's happening behind you.
Yeah.
But they mix the dialogue sequences in in Dolby Atmos.
Yeah.
And
Which is probably like 35.1 or something.
Yeah,
shit.
I don't know. Speakers all over the place. But so what happens is that if you're pointing at a character and the person who was speaking before you is now behind you, you hear that person behind you now. And it was like, oh, wow, this is, and it seems so easy, seems so simple.
It felt super familiar to me. I think weirdly enough, because of a lot of gaming.
Right. Yeah. Gaming does that. Gaming does
that consistently. And when I was watching it, I was like, I was wowed by it, and I was also comfortable with it. And then I was thinking about it after the fact. I was like, oh yeah, because that's what half of my entertainment medium does now. And I'm like, it's super cool that a film like dove in on that level of immersion, for lack of a better term.
From the filmmaker who made Gravity and pioneered, and really worked with Dolby Atmos, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And Children of Men, of course. So. Absolutely immersive experience. But Matt, and also this was a unique one for me. Again, I'm coming to it with a lot of baggage.
I can see that.
I'm coming to this movie with a lot of baggage. But then,
I do that as well, so I'm very curious how this...
Well, the third part of the baggage that the third compartment of baggage that I'm bringing to this film.
They only let you have one carry-on share and one personal item.
One carry-on, one personal item.
Is this your therapy animal?
No, this is the piece that I pay for. This is
the
additional,
you bought it!
Yeah, this is the additional luggage that I paid for. Because I could see most people having the first two pieces of luggage that I have. The third piece of luggage for me was the idea that this was a deeply personal film about the way in which he grew up.
Yes.
And the thing that this conjured up for me that I just haven't thought about a lot is that I grew up in Fiji. And in Fiji, it was common to have a housemaid, who lived and worked in the house with you. And I had just kind of forgotten about that entire experience. And I'm presuming for you, because you grew up in New Hampshire, that wasn't it wasn't a normal occurrence. But in third world countries, in a lot of like in India, for example, as well, it is common to have someone live and work in the house with you. And I watched this twice. The second time with my mother and my wife, and
Wow.
The thing that the conversation it sparked was about those people that lived in our house and like worked with us, and my mother, like reminded me, it was like, oh, there was a one woman, Mere, who would like take you to kindergarten every day, and I was such a sort of dickbag kid that like my kindergarten teacher would ask me to do certain tasks, and I would turn to her, to Mere, and tell her to do it. Like my teacher would tell me to like paint something, and I would walk over to Mere, who was waiting for me, and say, "Could you paint this for me?" And it was like this whole memory of like this person that lived in your life that I hadn't really thought about ever since. Now, it wasn't the same for us in that we didn't have one person stay and raise us the whole time.
Right.
We had sort of a cycle of people coming through. But it reminded me of like that entire experience and the inner world of people who I hadn't really thought about in a long time. And I read a quote from Nick Pemberton, who writes for Sight and Sound, and he wrote this thing about Roma that I thought was interesting. Now, Roma is, of course, now it is a sort of front runner at the Oscars. Everyone is talking about it. It is on a number of top 10 lists at number one.
It's literally inside the N on Netflix when you start Netflix now.
Inside the N?
Really? When the Netflix logo goes and
Yeah.
it goes to the N, the inside is her on the beach.
Right. They're gunning for this movie.
Yeah.
They're really gunning for this movie. But Nick Pemberton wrote, Roma is the sort of movie that successful pop filmmakers say they'd like to use their clout to make, but almost never do. And so you're thinking about a filmmaker like Alfonso Cuarón, a guy who made Children of Men, which wasn't that successful, Gravity, which made him a lot of money and won him a Best Director Oscar, I believe. And who doesn't come back right away. Like, it's taken him 4 or 5 years to kind of make this movie, and has come back with something deeply personal and unique about his life.
You make the big action picture, you make the personal picture.
Right, but I think what Nick Pemberton is saying is that how many big action movie filmmakers go this small after they've made their big action movie?
Well, I don't think they do it as good. There's a lot of them that do. Like, I'm going to go to Joss Whedon right
The only
after.
one I thought of was Joss
Avengers when he did what was it?
The Shakespeare film.
Yeah, why am I forgetting it? I own it on Blu-ray. I watch it probably once a year. Whatever, doesn't matter. You can look that up. Not you.
I'm gonna look it up, but because
I'm being you when you're a kid, being like, oh yeah, there's
Much Ado About Nothing.
Much Ado About Nothing. Could you look that up for me? Thanks.
I'm doing that because I had forgotten the title as well.
And that's a fine film. It's not as good as this movie, but I like it.
Yeah. I think the other one I thought of was Peter Jackson doing King Kong, which was something that was deeply important to him.
But it was also, that's a kind of a combo film.
Yeah,
it's
but
also
it was
as
deeply,
T-Rex fighting like giant.
But it was a deeply important film to Peter Jackson to make that movie.
Well, sure. I mean, look, if you want to get into deeply, but see, now we're skirting, because then you want to look at, say, Edgar Wright and Baby Driver.
Right.
Baby Driver was a very important movie for Edgar Wright to make,
but it's not a personal movie,
right?
Right.
But King Kong, no, but it is for him. It's not for us.
Right.
King Kong was personal for Peter Jackson. It's not for us. I think Roma has a thing where it's a personal film for Alfonso, but it's also, he's making it so it can be a personal film for us.
Right.
If that's weird and convoluted, but that's kind of what I think. Like, we can't judge. I mean, I don't think this is true, but any film that any director makes could be like Michael Bay could have been like Transformers: The Last Night.
Well,
was
Pain
the most
and Gain might have been his really
Sure.
personal film.
Like, yeah, that's the thing.
But this is. But I guess what Nick Pinkerton is talking about is the fact that this is. It's so like you could see other filmmakers making King Kong. You couldn't see any other filmmaker making Roma. Like no other filmmaker could make Roma. Right?
So now, yeah, you in the same way, I think you could people could make, say, King Kong closer to Peter Jackson's King Kong than someone could remake Roma closer to Alfonso Cuarón's Roma.
I don't think anyone could make Roma. Roma is unique to Alfonso Cuarón.
Well, yes, okay, yes.
And I think there are people you could say, like, you could see Steven Spielberg making King Kong, and it could be similar or not, like close enough. But Steven Spielberg wouldn't make Roma.
No,
Peter
because
Jackson wouldn't make Roma.
no, but I think I'm agreeing with you, but we're also getting into territory that there's always someone that could make it.
I don't think anyone could make. I think
Well, not the exact thing, but things that are equally emotionally resonant to the same number of people. Not the same people.
I'm talking about how personal this seems to be to Alfonso Cuarón.
Well, see, that's where I'm going to have to disagree with. I mean, no, I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
But I can't agree with the statement. The amount of personal self that is put into this, put into Roma, I will not say that no other filmmaker has ever put that much of emotional self.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that no other filmmaker could make a film about living in Roma in Mexico City, about their maid, about the nanny, the woman that raised them, like Alfonso Cuarón could. No other filmmaker, because this is a film about him.
Well, sure.
You know what I mean?
Yes. This specific story could not be. But that's
I understand what you're saying,
but
which
that's
is
also
quantifying personalization.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know, but also what you're saying is like, well, no one could do the podcast the way that we do the podcast. Like
anyone could do the podcast.
No, but not the exact way. Yeah. See, that's that's where the value sort of goes away, and then the value comes from how many people. I'm literally trying to quantify emotion. But
yeah, exactly.
But like that, it comes from like how many people get the effect that the director wanted from it, and I think a lot of people will. I'm not arguing this.
Right, you're talking about the effect of like what it's like to experience the film. I'm saying nobody else could make Roma. Specifically Roma.
Well, yeah, but again, it's like no one could make this cup of coffee exactly how I made this cup of coffee.
It's not even exactly like.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm saying no one could make Roma. Nobody else could make Roma. Only Alfonso Cuarón could make Roma, because Roma is about. You need to define
the word "make." That's the thing.
Direct, write, edit, shoot.
Sure.
As he did.
No one could make this cup of coffee the way I made this cup of coffee, because I used the certain amount of roast that I chose, and then I put it into this thing, and I did this stuff.
I see what you're saying. I'm not sure why you're saying it.
Because I this is not an insult to Alfonso Cuarón or Roma.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting to be on the other side of a film that like you're so emotionally attached to, because like now I'm sort of seeing like the like, wow, when I'm talking about Marvel, you're just like, well, yeah, but like movies kind of,
I agree.
Like so like I just think the interesting thing about Roma is not that because it is a personal tale, no one else could tell it exactly the same way that, I mean, of course not, but no one could do anything the exact way that anyone does. This is just an incredibly powerful thing that he made that of course no one could do.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure what your point of saying that is, because I don't see how that...
I think that it's kind of a moot point.
Right.
The effect that it has on you and the effect that it has on people that watch it, I think that is and that's something I'd like to discuss.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the piece of luggage I wouldn't pay for out of your 2 out of 3.
Right. Okay.
It's just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. And again, get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
There's more poignant. It's a moot point, because it says actually. Your other things had very like, oh, this makes total sense. This makes total sense. And this makes sense. It just doesn't have the weight of your first 2 things. It almost like, I was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
fair enough. I'll take it.
Let's talk about the movie.
Let's talk about the movie. So, Matt, your experience, I've kind of talked enough about it.
So I love Children of Men. I love it. I think Children of Men was actually, I don't know why I think of this now, but I think of films in terms of the graphics we make for them at this point.
Oh, yeah?
And it's one of the worst graphics I've ever made for it. It's me and Shahir in the crowd scene with Clive Owen looking up at the television.
Okay.
Near the beginning when the youngest person dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for Children of Men.
For the first time.
Yeah. And that movie, there's a film that I've watched in different parts of my life that have meant entirely different things, and each one is a transformative experience in the sense of how I explain. Like before, I saw it as sort of just like a cool dystopian kind of like thriller, and then you start seeing as you get older and you start thinking about children and sort of like the actual thing it's trying to say.
Children,
all
men.
that, yeah. And then you could look at it from from that one take scene. You could look at it and you could look at that scene from just a beautifully choreographed sort of action scene to actually what it's trying to say when things get quiet, etc. Love that film. Gravity I didn't connect with quite as much. I think it was an amazing technical feat.
Have you seen You Too, Mama?
Forever ago, and to my discredit, I think I saw it at a time where it wasn't what I'll coin for you a pilgrimage moment, where I wasn't in the right headspace or I wasn't quite paying enough attention to it. Like, I saw that there was something special there, but I was probably trying to hit on someone in college or something. Like, I don't.
Not a good movie to.
No.
Maybe a good movie to.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't. That's the thing. So with this film, I was excited because you were excited about it. And I knew whether I loved it or I hated it, there'd be a very good discussion to have.
Yeah.
But I also, with Alfonso Cuarón, I've loved his work, and I've been like, oh, this is good, and I've been a little ambivalent. Like, it's been the entire spectrum. This is no slight to him. It's just how I've engaged with the films. And when I watched this movie, it did something interesting. So I started it, and I wasn't too into it in the beginning. And I think because at its base, granted, it's incredibly personal, but it's kind of incredibly, it's a basic human life piece. And by that, I mean, like, nothing happens that's like insanely out of the horrors or the loves or the things that, like, we've either experienced ourselves or we see in other things, like and that's not a slight, because it's literally a slice of life for this woman in the 1970s in Mexico. And when it started, I was like, okay. Oh, actually, great thing. In the beginning, you see water, you see a tile floor, which is kind of representative of a bunch of different stuff in the film. And then you see water wash over it, and then you see the reflection of a skylight or just the sky through an open garage sort of thing. And you start seeing a plane, and you realize, like, it's just this beautiful one shot of, like, someone washing the floor, and you see it, and, like, I was like, whoa. And that, even in that first minute bbefore that happens, with just the slow credits and the quiet, I was like, okay. And then that happened. I was like, yes. And then I was so like, every time something happened in this movie, it clicked another version of my attention span, like, in. Right. Like, that was like, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a visually dynamic film that every shot means something. And I was like, great, I know what to look for now. And then I was like, okay, cool, this is what I'm in for. Then the first, like, sound thing happened where I was like, I'm in this space. I was like, holy okay. I was like, gravity done you right. Like, this is great. And as I was watching it, I got more and more emotionally engaged. I will say, and I straight up, anyone should watch it in either the pilgrimage way that Shahir said, or if you can't do that, watch it at home, because it's definitely still worth it there.
Yeah.
I will say that sort of at the end of it, I was looking forward to this discussion, because I was thinking about how it didn't quite stick with me in a way that I kind of expected it to, especially after all of those things kept clicking and clicking, and I felt like I got to an emotional peak, especially near the one of the end moments, and then afterward, people asked me. I was at a party last night, and people asked me what I thought about it, and I was like, it's really great. You have to see it. The visuals are stunning, and the audio is top notch. And they're like, well, how's the story? And I was like, it's good.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm not sort of doing it justice to those who connected with it on that level. But so I came away with it really appreciating what it was, but it didn't, I dare I say, it didn't really show me, even though it's a slice of life that I am not familiar with, it didn't show me anything so new that I was like, this sticks like forever with me.
Right.
And it's funny, the last thing I'll sort of say is my girlfriend Jamie, his roommate Tanya, who has actually been on the show during the New Year's party episode.
Okay.
She's from Mexico.
Right.
And she knew the film was coming out. She hadn't seen it yet.
Right.
But she asked her dad if she had seen it, because if he had
seen it.
Yeah, sorry. If he had seen it. And he's like, yeah, I saw it. It was fine. And she's like, really? He's like, yeah, that was my life.
Right.
He's like, and that got me thinking of this weird sort of situation of, if this was someone, I mean, not Alfonso's, but like, because that's, you're literally telling, it's like a Dear Diary moment, and that's always going to be personal. I wonder how, like, the average Mexican man in 1970 would, and granted, I'm literally hearing this third to fourth party. He could have had a different reaction than he told his daughter, like, whatever it is. But like, it got me thinking, like, wow, what if someone did a really, like, an incredibly well done emotional tale of, like, growing up in southern New Hampshire, in the 1980s. Like,
Right.
could it be as emotional, but then I wouldn't care?
Right.
Like, I don't know. That's a tangent, means nothing about the film, but I had a unique a moment where I could talk to someone who, or not talk to, like hear the story about someone's interacting with this film who it was also basically their life. They were in the same socioeconomic class. They did the whole thing. So, this is a great film to watch and think about while watching. It's just it didn't quite stick with me once it was done. And that's why I was psyched to talk to you about it, because I knew you would find things in it that or things would stick with you in it that did not necessarily stick with me.
So I will say this: when I walked out of the movie, I was like, I knew I was deeply moved by the movie, but I couldn't articulate why.
Okay.
You know, like I was like, and this is that sort of same experience with You to Mama, which was that I was like, I knew something had changed, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And I was like, and it was really bugging me because I was like, my job is to articulate why I think this movie is great. But I couldn't, because I agreed with you. Like the first half of the movie, I was kind of just there, and I wasn't incredibly invested. I was just I was in admiration, and it was only the second half. And then I was like, no, I just need time to sit with this movie. I just need time to think about it. And I actually watched it a second time.
Yeah.
Not for that reason, because I think by the time I watched it a second time, I kind of knew how I felt about it. But I just wanted to I just wanted to watch it again, to be honest with you. And I wanted to watch it again with my mother and with my wife. And I wanted to see how they felt about it.
Right.
And it's interesting. I'm going to skirt around my feelings for a little while and just talk about how other people felt about it.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I didn't want to derail you, but I was so curious how your mom and your wife.
Yeah. Because again, we grew up not in Mexico City, obviously, but not in that in the exact environment. But it conjured up the life that we had lived at some point. Yeah. And I didn't, I know we are the only podcast about movies, but I listened to a couple of other podcasts about Roma.
How?
I don't know how. Maybe I imagined it, maybe I dreamt it.
Okay. But what were the names of them? Do you remember?
So the Slash Filmcast is a podcast that I listen to kind of quickly. It's not. I really like the Slash Filmcast, but it's not like if I'm trying to critically think about something, it's not necessarily the podcast I go to.
Your subconscious is weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I made up all these characters. But there was an interesting thing that happened in the Slash Filmcast this week, and I urge you guys, listen to us first, but then go listen to that episode, because an interesting thing happened is that they brought a guest on. I'm not going to name the names of the guests, because I think you should go listen to it themselves. But a reviewer came on who said they didn't like the film at all. They thought that the film was about a rich guy, talking about his nanny growing up, and that nanny had no agency in the film and was poorly depicted, and it was and this reviewer was just like not on board for this movie.
Okay.
And then the second reviewer said, "Oh, okay. Well, here's an interesting thing, just to like put us in the frame of reference, is that this second reviewer has a nanny who looks after their children, 5 days a week for a few hours.
Sure.
And that nanny had come from El Salvador and saw that this reviewer had a copy of Roma and asked to borrow it. And he was like, oh, absolutely. I would love to see what you think about this film. And she wrote, and the nanny then wrote him a text message that he read out on air about her experience of watching the movie. And she was like, and she, again, go listen to it, but it was really interesting because she was like basically saying, I've never seen a film where the main character, looked like me and the film was about my life. And she said, and she wept watching it. She couldn't believe that this film existed.
Yeah.
She couldn't believe how much this film got right about her life and basically reflected upon her existence. And it was interesting because the first reviewer who said that the film had created no agency for this woman was like, oh, okay, I guess I can kind of see, it's suddenly like this entire line of argument was thrown out the window because someone deeply personally reflected on it. And the thing that I think is really important is I sat through the end credits of this movie, and of course the first thing that comes up is for the end credits is for Lebo, who was Alfonso Cuarón's nanny growing up, or the housemaid that looked after him and raised him. And it's the thing that I realized, and it gets back to that sort of deeply personal thing that I was talking about, and only he could make this movie, is the idea that this movie is a love letter to the woman that raised him, and it's a loving portrait. And I was like, and the second time I watched it, like there are those staggering moments in this movie, those incredible baffling moments where you're watching, going, how did they even pull this off? Like, there are scenes in this movie that are beyond comprehension in terms of the level of commitment it requires to make a movie.
Sure.
And they rival anything in Children of Men and Gravity in terms of their scale, in terms of their coordination, in terms of the things that he's doing with the camera.
Yeah.
And I think, just to side note it for a second, the first half of this movie is, while it's establishing the rhythm of her life, of Cleo's life. We haven't even actually talked about the synopsis of this film, by the way.
Which I can tell you right now if you want.
Do that quickly. So.
IMDb describes Roma as a story that chronicles a year in the life of a high-class family's maid in Mexico City in the early 1970s.
I would say they're middle class, but whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
I know nothing. This is where I'm officially not. I don't know. Like that seemed like it would be an upper class. Family.
I guess somewhere like.
I always think of maid as upper class, and I know
No,
you literally just said that that's not the case.
No.
It's just my bias of what I understand.
I guess it's sort of common in. I mean, the fact that they had two maybe might have made things different.
Sure.
But at any rate, that first half of the movie is so important because what it's doing is it's establishing the rhythm of her life. In real great detail. The second thing it's doing is it's also establishing the visual rhythm of this movie. And what I love about the visual rhythm of this movie is it's entirely structural. Like it's very, very well structured, but it never feels schematic. Like the rhythm of the movie is established, in those amazing panning shots at the beginning of the movie where she's basically, we're doing sort of 360s around the house, seeing her day-to-day life and what she has to do to kind of like keep this house in order. But it's not, like there's no histrionics to it. There's no like high drama to it. We're just seeing the little tasks that she's having to do, like turning off all the lights and panning around with that, putting the laundry out, washing people's clothes and, making food and preparing, that sort of thing.
One thing I really, on this note, one thing I really liked, and this is a consistent thing throughout the film, is a film would always sort of do the circular sort of pan, right, like you just described, and it would not just stay with Cleo or whoever it was following. It would continue past when they left.
Yeah.
And I really liked that because it was like, it gave me a couple different things. One, it gave me obviously a good idea of like what's going on in sort of the space that we're in. Again, helping with the immersion we discussed before. But two, it gave me the feeling of, while this is a personal story about Cleo, it was like, there was a real distinct sort of, and this is something a lot of slice of life films I think miss, a distinct feeling of the world continues no matter who's there. Like,
Right.
Did that make sense? Like, yes, this is Cleo's story, but it's important to realize that like there's a million things going on. And while we're going to follow Cleo, you need to understand that the things that are going to happen to Cleo are kind of due to many things outside of her agency.
Right.
And I liked that. Those, and again, that's not what the film's about. It was just, it helped me stay in the space more for a, especially in the first half, for a quieter film.
Yeah.
That like the immersion, that was just another ingredient in the immersion suit.
I mean, so, and to that point, I think it's something that Alfonso Cuarón seems to have this sort of preternatural skill at, is that his voice with the camera is entirely unique. Like, in Y Tu Mama Tambien, it's a similar thing, which is that the camera continues on in the space when characters leave it. And the camera kind of, it almost feels like its own ghostly character. It never feels like someone's in control of it, even though it's a handheld movie. But it feels like the camera, it's not a objective camera. It's a subjective camera that's moving through this space. And the thing that was really that kind of unlocked it for me, in some respect, is to remember that this is, again, a deeply personal portrait. This is his family, and he's talking about the time that his dad left the family.
Yep.
And he is a character in this film. He's the youngest child is meant to be sort of who he was.
Okay, I didn't know which kid he was supposed to be.
He's the youngest child, but the film never takes the point of view of any character other than Cleo.
Yeah.
Like, so it kind of watches her life, and then whenever it switches to a point of view shot, which it does from time to time, it will only ever do it if it's her point of view.
Yeah.
And it was, and what that unlocked for me was realizing that this was, he was acknowledging that this was a film about something very deeply personal in his life, but what he wants to do is to make sure that he's creating a portrait of her life, and it's about this character who often gets forgotten and dismissed by the family. Like the mother kind of like is going through her own trauma, and she takes it out on Cleo. She yells at her, like sort of unnervingly. But the camera, what the camera is doing is playing a sort of unique, sort of spatial position of being about her. The camera is always focused on what she's doing and how she reacts to everything. And it's sort of really interesting because I think one of the ways you could have played this movie that would be, I still think a good movie, but not quite exactly how this movie operates.
Right.
Is you could do it from the point of view of Paco, the little the younger boy, like watching his maid, and that would really firmly ground you on who's telling the story. But instead, what he wants to do is he wants to paint a portrait of this woman. He wants to observe this woman and her life and her story and her journey. And it's a journey that I think is interesting because, he didn't know this journey. He didn't know what happened to her as he was growing up. It was only when he got older. And the thing that I love about this is that this character, not quite this character, but she appears in You Tu Mama También. In You Tu Mama También, there's a maid character that lives with the richer family, and there's this like loving moment that, again, I think only a filmmaker with this kind of empathy and this kind of foresight would make. Was that it always stuck with me? This scene is that the I think it's played by Diego Luna is kind of sitting around smoking weed and like playing a video game or watching TV or something. And the phone is next to him ringing, and the maid comes in and has to, answers it for him. And then, even though he's sitting right next to it.
Sure.
And then she makes him a sandwich and then hands it to him. But she does it, I don't know why, this has always stuck with me. She does it with absolute love, even though he's being kind of a dick and he's being a douche, and you're like, this fucking kid. She's like, she makes him the sandwich and she gives it to him, and she like treats him like she's his, it's his son, and she just, she has to look after him. And it was like, the thing about this movie that struck me that I couldn't articulate when I watched it was that this is a love letter to a woman in his life. It's basically a love letter to his other mother. That he'd never thought about. And the film is an investigation of her life. And when I kind of unlocked and figured out how the visual schematic was kind of doing that, and how the film is this loving portrait, and then thinking about those terms in terms of like some of the shots that appear in this movie, then I was like, this is why this is such a deeply personal film. And now the second time I watched it, I was just in tears the whole time. And I was in tears the first time, but the second time it kind of really hit me what he was trying to do with this movie.
I'm very glad it wasn't from Paco's perspective or his little perspective, because that to me, and I don't think he'd make that movie. That's the interesting. I mean, he obviously didn't, but I wouldn't expect that movie from him. The type of film that like is
sorry, it's Pepe. I think it was
Pepe.
Yeah,
I thought it was. Oh, I don't know.
I thought there is another character.
I don't know.
But there is another character called Papo, and there's Pepe.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think making a film from the perspective of yourself that's supposed to be about another person as you as a child, it would be the self-indulgence of a younger filmmaker, I feel like, or a younger man, like a college level sort of film that feels very like still thinking that he's the most important thing, even though he's totally telling this person's story. That's absolutely not what this film is. I think only someone who is as seasoned and emotionally in touch with why he's feeling things as Alfonso is would have the wherewithal and the forethought to make the film the way he did. I think it was. I like looking at it from that perspective. I mean, I thought about it a little bit, but you sort of opened up a couple things on that regard as well. Because truth be told, again, like how I said in the beginning, I think one of the reasons why it didn't stick with me was it's not. Nothing happened. I'll back up.
Yeah.
I felt like almost every emotional or dramatic thing that happens in this film is highly telegraphed. And by that I mean you're never shocked at the way a thing turns out because he does the emotional homework before the event in the film happens. It's funny, we can talk about this movie without actually talking about the events because you don't have to.
Yeah.
He does the emotional like groundwork and lays the foundation so that when the thing happens, you know it's coming, but he does it so well, you get that sort of dread that a person might have in an emotional response. Like, when you're in something and you're like, oh God, like in your life, you're like, this is going to turn out bad. And you're like, no, just keep going. Maybe it won't turn out bad. And it turns out bad. Yeah. It's that like level of like, in your gut that he nails. And I really like thinking about it from that perspective now along with so that feeling we were having, it wasn't actually like I didn't connect with it. Like I never saw, obviously I didn't really see myself in there, but I could empathize with Cleo because it's the film does all the work to get you in the emotional space, if not the headspace of Cleo.
Yeah.
And that's impressive. Like that's
it's so impressive.
Yeah.
Like there's an extraordinary thing here, which is that again that sense that the film is like entirely, it's so well structured, but it never feels like work. Like
Yes.
you know what I mean? And the thing that's amazing about this is that again, I am in awe of the altar of Alfonso Cuarón. I know I am a fanboy, but
that's all right. You're talking to another fanboy right now for other things.
But it's like he is. He is so good at what he does that he almost every genre he goes into and every film kind of feels like an entirely different thing, like that he masters that thing. Like this feels like it could have come from an indie art house darling that you've never heard or seen before. But this is one of the biggest filmmakers in the world.
You just said he could only do it. He was the only one that could do it.
I'm saying the style of film, could come from, like anywhere. But or you could imagine it coming out of, like you having to go to an indie art house movie to see this movie.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this is one of the biggest filmmakers in the world making this movie and doing it as masterfully and as concisely and as well thought out as any filmmaker. And then he brings all the kind of the big budget tools from those bigger movies into this world and completely unifies them in a way where it doesn't feel like nothing in this goes, oh, this is the biggest filmmaker in the world making this movie. It's this entirely unique vision for how this works, and he's so fucking good. It's incredible how good he is at doing this. Like there is no other. There has not been another movie like Children of Men since Children of Men came out. Right? There's never
right.
There's no other film like that. There hasn't been a film like Gravity since Gravity came out.
Yes,
and I don't think there will be a film like Roma to come out ever. That's what I think is so unique about his voice.
and I think we're gonna go on a bit of a divergent path for that third one, only because again it kind of goes back to our initial semantic argument, where it's like, of course there's never gonna be, of course not.
What you're saying is, of course, what I'm saying is moot because of course that is the case, right? And I think I'm highlighting that point because I think that's important to note because this is such a personal film.
Yes,
that is important to note that to me, Alfonso Cuarón is making such a personal story here, and it can be difficult to unlock, I guess, in some points because it's so unique.
but as far as sort of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I was trying to think when I was watching this because I was like, again, my only criticism of the film itself was kind of like what I said before, is how it didn't really connect with me, and I was like, oh, why? Like overall, I was like, why didn't it? Because I can see all the pieces.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, well, maybe it's because like I've seen, again, not this story, but like similar stories in the past, or similar, I guess, emotional journeys. And for whatever reason, I don't, because this is a completely different film, and I don't know why my brain went here. I went to Mother.
Yep. Okay.
And I was like, that's a film that took me on. Oh, granted, that's a representative journey way more than
more
it is
allegorical.
Allegorical, thank you. Then this is Roma is a literal story, and it's great for that. And maybe I connect more with some things that are more allegorical. It might be why I connect with superhero films a lot, because I connect with sort of the allegory of the entire thing as opposed to the actual real nitty gritty and personable stuff. Wow, that's unlocked a thing. So I think. It might have to do with my emotional tenor of how I retain highly emotional information and what I read from it.
Yeah.
Where the more allegorical or nebulous the thing is, I can attach it more to my own life. Whereas something that is very specific, I can feel the emotion of it in the moment.
Yeah.
But it won't stick with me. In a weird it won't stick with me as well.
Yeah, the other movie you should watch this year that is on a lot of top 10 lists is Shoplifters, the Hirokazu Kurita film.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's another movie which is so specific. You're like, wait, how, like the movie like moves in this way and reveals a story that is like so unique and so specific that you're like, it's hard to like latch onto it.
Okay.
And I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
The thing here, I guess I'm curious from your point of view, is by the time you got to the finale of the movie, had the movie kind of locked you into it, or it kind of put you in a position to understand at least the final moment? Because I think what's important about the way the film schematically works, even though I said it's not a schematic film, it is very structured. It's highly structured.
Oh yeah.
Is that the first half of the movie, you're just observing this character. You're just observing, and you're kind of like...
It's laying the groundwork.
It's laying the groundwork in an interesting way, because I think what it's trying to do is make sure that you see the world that everybody else is ignoring. And you realize that that everybody else ignores the internal things that are happening with this character, and the film kind of moves to like, and that's what that shifting, panning sort of language is doing, is it shifts and pans you over to her world. And then by the end of the film, it entirely immerses you. You know, you should be, I think in my mind, immersed into her emotional journey. And even if that emotional journey doesn't resonate with you, I think the way the film works is to kind of like slowly move your point of view into that world.
I think maybe I misspoke when I said the word, or I was sort of saying it didn't resonate with me. In the moment, the film entirely resonated with me. It in the beginning, due to technical prowess, earned my attention, and then through emotional weight, got me invested in the characters and what was happening. I was able to empathize throughout the entire thing.
Right.
I don't know why. Like, I was having a difficult time just sort of prepping for this podcast because I wanted to bring something to the table, and I was like, a lot of times if I'm very excited about a film, I'll have things that just sort of jump up at me. And this one I had to sort of like really think, and it's not bad. It's just like I had to sort of think about like, well, what really grabbed me? It's like, okay, well, I do think it was actually the technical stuff that allowed me to get this close to a thing that I'm not familiar with, which I think has its own merits. I just it didn't have that oh my God of me, like I thought about it because we were doing a thing that I wanted to talk about. I didn't think about it because it was stuck in my mind.
No. I can totally understand that. I guess what I'm saying there is that regardless of whether you were able to kind of latch onto the character or not, did you think that the film was successful in kind of moving you towards it? Whether it kind of
above and beyond successful,
right?
Again, and it does it. And it uses every weapon in a filmmaker's arsenal to get you there,
right?
And takes you. It literally is like slowly putting you into a vehicle and like fastening your seatbelt, like making sure your headrest is adjusted and check your mirrors, and then it's like we're going.
Yeah. And it's so like I think that's just this command of the language that he has that's just like unparalleled. But I drug up like again, then I started reading about like where sorry, dropped the mic there. I was dropping the mic.
Whoa.
I was reading up on like where the story came from for him and where he was kind of like coming from in terms of doing the film, and he was talking. There's an interview with Emmanuel Lubezki, who shot his previous 4 films, and is the only. This is the side note here. This is just the fascinating thing, which is that his cinematographer is the only cinematographer in the world to have won the Oscar 3 times in a row, and he won it for The Revenant, Gravity, and one other film which I can't recall at this point. And the world's greatest cinematographer living right now outside of Roger Deakins, probably. Sure. And Alfonso Cuarón wanted him to shoot the film, and over prep time, because they shot the film in 108 days, which is like 3 months or something like that. And they shot it in sequence. They shot it like formally in sequence. He was like, I need to create a structure for this film that makes sense so that we're constantly escalating it.
It makes total sense to do it that way. That's nice that he had the leeway to do that.
He says he talks about how coming off Gravity, he and Chivo were talking about how it's not the toys and it's not the budget that always like drives them nuts. It's the time. And he says he wanted to go to a film. He wanted to make a film in the way that he would enjoy making it. Like he wanted to make and he was like, and then he said he was scared to make this film because it was like, he's coming off Gravity. He's just won an Oscar. Like what is the follow up? But he's not. What I think I love is that he kind of decided, this is not about my career. This is about me as an artist. And he said, I am getting older, and I want to investigate through the medium that I work in where what my life is about,
And see-
and what was important to me in my life. And he talked about. Oh, yeah, sorry, you.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and that's a reason why I really like him, not only as a director but as a person. Like, this is more to him than just a job. It's more to him than him thinking of himself as an artiste, which a lot of, I feel like, people in the industry kind of get to.
You can get caught up in like the career of it.
You can buy into your own hype. You can love the smell of your own farts, and this is a man that does neither of those things. And he. What do you do after you've just won the Oscar for Gravity, right?
Yeah.
You could go and try to make another film like that, or not like that, but like in the same ilk, or do something bigger or whatever. But he chose to do something that was emotionally important to him. Obviously, make it with the utmost of craft and skill. But he chose to do something that's incredibly personal, and that's something that I think not only is, I won't call it. I was about to be like, it's so brave. I don't know if it's brave, because he has confidence, obviously, in his skill and his craft. But it was, you know what it is? It is, I will call it giving, if that makes a weird sense. He is giving us something that is important. He's sharing. That's what it is. He's sharing something that's incredibly personal to us. Granted, Gravity had a personal story. Children of Men had a personal story.
He finds the personal in those bigger stories.
It wasn't his. And this is him giving the audience, or giving the film-going public, like, really access and sharing an emotional journey he witnessed and wanted to understand more, and did throughout making this film.
So he talked about working with Lebo, the person, who's still alive. And he said, like, I had extensive conversations with the real life Cleo writing for her character. And I was forced, and I was forced for the first time in my life to see her as a woman, and to see the complexities of her situation. A woman that comes from a more disadvantaged social class, and also comes from an indigenous heritage in a society that is ridden by class. And in the third world, there is a very perverse relationship. And in the third world, where there is a very perverse relationship between class and race. And I think, we were talking about, like, I wanted to see this with my wife and my mother, and see what they thought about it. And the first thing, my mother loved the movie. She was like, it kind of just spoke to her. And what was cool was that she started talking about, my mother just started telling me all these stories of all the women that came into our house that looked after us when we were growing up, as she was working and stuff. And then she started telling me about, like, I've forgotten how much my mom loves movies. Like, and I think because we don't talk about movies a lot.
Should have her on the show.
We should have her on the show. She's fantastic. She's my mother. Yeah. But then she was like, oh, there's this Bollywood film called Aradhana from like 1968. It was about a nanny. And she was like, she recounted to me the whole entire story of this movie that she had seen like 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
And it was like, oh yeah, maybe this is where I get, some of that sort of like, because she remembered all the details of this like one movie she had seen so long ago. And I'd forgotten that my mom has, because we never talk about movies. So anyway, she just loved the movie.
Yeah.
But my wife said this one thing that I thought was really interesting. And it reminded me of a conversation that I had when I was doing my master's in screenwriting. And my lecturer there, like, we would have these one-on-one crit sessions, which would last 4 or 5 hours, where they would tear apart your script.
Good times.
And they would just tear apart everything you'd written. And Ken Duncan, bless him, wonderful playwright. He said this thing to me. He was like, because I was writing a story that was an adaptation of a real life event, and he was really trying to dig into me with every scene. He was like, why do you want to tell this story? And I would give him all these answers about how I think this story is like about the hypocrisy of society and yada, 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 and it's about this, 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 and this. And he was like, no, you need to think about he says, somewhere inside you is something that speaks directly to the story, and you don't know what it is yet, and that is what attracts you to it. And he says, and what you don't realize is that this story, no matter how much it's about someone else, is actually about you. It's actually a reflection of what you think of the world and the way you see the world. And the reason I thought that was important is my wife watched the movie, and at the end of it, she goes, "What a wonderful man." She was like, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard he's a really nice guy." She goes, "He has to be in order to make that movie."
Yeah,
like like a person who is a terrible person who like is an asshole can't do that movie.
Yeah,
like she was like, the kind of person that makes that movie is the kind of person who thinks deeply about other people.
Yep.
And that's the only kind of person that can make that movie. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You know, and it got into that thing, which was that whether you want it or not, every film is a reflection of the people that made it.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of their worldview of the people that made it. And this film is a deeply empathetic film about a person in his life that he wants to try and understand and share with other people because he loves her. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what makes this film so unique and interesting.
That good on Shivali for nailing that down.
She absolutely nailed that down, and I was like, oh yeah, he has to be. Now, you know, I want to, if listeners are sort of interested in this story, I just think this was an extraordinary article. It came out last year in The Atlantic. It's by a writer by the name of Alex Tizon, who actually passed away recently. This is the most extraordinary article. It's called "My Family's Slave." And it's about a guy who didn't. It's sort of a similar thing, but in a very different context. But he didn't realize that his family's nanny, who had raised his mother and then eventually like moved in with him, was kind of taken from her home in the Philippines and brought to his house and kind of like
Jesus.
But the thing is that while it kind of is trying to put her situation in context, it's also a love letter to this woman who like raised him and is raising his children. And there's this wonderful passage in it that I pulled up because I was reminded of that article.
Where is this article?
It's in The Atlantic.
Okay.
So look up The Atlantic. Look up My Family's Slave, Alex Tizon. And it's about a woman named Lola who again looked after him. And there's this passage that I read that kind of really struck me. It was, Lola fed, groomed, and dressed my mother. When they walked to the market, Lola held an umbrella to shield her from the sun. At night, when Lola's other tasks were done, feeding the dogs, sweeping the floors, folding the laundry that she had washed by hand in the Camelling River, she sat at the edge of my mother's bed and fanned her to sleep. And it was there is this unique thing that goes beyond transactional in these cultures where a nanny is brought into the house, where the nanny becomes the surrogate mother, and in almost every sense of the word becomes the surrogate mother. There's scenes in Roma where Cleo is waking up the kids, and it's like she's like she's like running her hands up and down them, tickling them, and kind of like, wake up, little mouse, and like they wake up and they're like so happy to see her, and they talk so much about how they love her, and I was like, and I was just struck about how much love she has for these children, and how much they love her, and how, because she's a surrogate mother, and I think not society in general, but like it's something that I just hadn't thought about before as well. And again, I thought about this woman that used to take me to kindergarten, and used to look after me, and used to bring me home after school and like make me a snack, and then like play with me, and like then wash my clothes and put me to sleep.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, there is this like depth of love there that is not often portrayed and not often thought about, but it is
portrayed well.
Yeah, and I really thought about that. Okay, and then my final thing is just the technical acumen of this movie.
Sure.
Okay, which is just, in a weird way, is like the last thing to think about, even though it is extraordinary. There's a scene in this movie, in the background of this movie. It's this amazing thing that Alfonso Cuarón does really well, which is the foreground background kind of connection. But there are scenes in this movie where there are background extras to the number of hundreds, possibly thousands. I don't know. It feels like thousands. It might not be. But he relegates them entirely to the background. Like there's a sequence where a riot goes on, and we only see it through the window of another shot. And it's like, oh, just imagine the coordination required to do that sequence, and how difficult that sequence must have been. And then finally, the last, this is, if we get into any specific spoilers.
Do we want to? Because we've been pretty clean so far.
We have been pretty clean. I'll try to do this as vaguely as possible. I watched a documentary about Sergio Leone a while back where James Wood's, terrible person on Twitter, but James
I was like, where are you going?
James Wood talked about how whenever, like, Sergio Leone would like hold his crew and wait for the rain to start and then call action. And he was like, only Sergio Leone would direct the weather. Right. And this film has such a mastery of the elements, Obviously, you mentioned water, which is right
Yep.
up front, and there's a scene that takes place in water in the rain. But they were watching at the same time. There are all these subtle cues about water. Like there's a scene where Cleo is running through the streets, and someone is like getting rid of the water out of their what are those things called that are hang above the
awning.
Yeah. She's like getting rid, and they time it so that as soon as Cleo runs past they push the water out of the awning so it like rushes past Cleo.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. But there's a sequence at the end of this movie that requires the mastery of the weather, water, child actors in an external environment, and then it's done in a single take where the final moment of the shot is like all these characters sitting perfectly, like backlit by the sun. And it's this extraordinary culmination of emotion, technical. There's a thing in IndieWire where they talk about that sequence where they only got one take of it.
Oh yeah.
They tried to get 6 takes of it, and it failed every single time. And then that one take where they land perfectly in the light and the emotional, and then you've got an actor who's a first-time actress leading that scene and having to go through like a real physical action, with all the stuff, and then like land on an emotional beat with child actors all around. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to shout out. Those will be my last words on the movie.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
I mean, I agree with everything you've said. I think again, this falls into the category of my gripe is more of how I experience film and it's not the film itself. Therefore, like, you'd be hard pressed to pick any actual nits with this film. It's just a matter of whether or not A, you're into this sort of film, and B, if you are, like I am, if it connects with you long after and the reasons why. I really like what you sort of said, Shahir, about what you said, what Chevalier said.
Yeah.
Just about it's literally showing a level of kindness and empathy in a person that is absolutely wonderful. It's also showing a perspective that despite all the I'll say trials and tribulations or just highs and lows of this woman that I've never experienced before. And that's always, whenever I'm shown something new, especially when I'm shown something new that is in, like, I'll go back to my thing of like, nothing surprised me in this movie, but the journey of understanding this woman told from a boy who lived with her when he was a child, that surprised me. Like, the plot itself I was never like, oh my God, I never saw it, which you don't have to.
Right.
It's just, it's a different kind of discovery, I think, than I normally get in a film. So, I think it was wonderful. I will watch it again at some point once the holiday season slows down. Zoe is very excited. Do you have something to say? You good?
She liked it.
Yeah, Zoe.
liked
Actually,
it, yeah.
Zoe did sit on my lap while we watched it,
Yeah.
so that is a sign of a film. It keeps the attention of a cat. No, it's a wonderful film. Everyone should see it. If you can't see it in the theater, see it on. If you have a decent, I will say, if you're gonna watch it at home, try not to watch it on your shitbox like Samsung TV speakers.
No, I would just say don't. I understand that like people, not everyone can like set up a thing. Just don't watch it on your phone. Is all I'm saying.
You're just going that low.
Yeah,
actually, no. Hold on.
Yeah.
I would actually say if you have a set of decent headphones for your phone,
Yeah.
I would rather you watch it on your phone than on a standard television Vizio speaker system, because there's something about being put in that space. And headphones, even with stereo headphones, the way that the sound, they can actually do things with it, I would say it might be in a more immersive experience. That's weird. That's so weird that I believe that, because I hate that idea.
I think, maybe, and I know I did finish out my final thoughts, but I think the interesting thing here is that even if you're a person that loves like Michael Bay movies and big action movies, and you love the sort of technology and like seeing movies on like on a big screen and sound and all that stuff, this is actually a movie that does all of that stuff better without being showy about it. Like, it never feels like it's about those things, but it actually is crafted much better. Well, whatever, relatively, but it's crafted in a way that brings in all of that sort of technical acumen into this world.
But the thing it crafts actually deserves it. Like, does that make, like, there's like, and because the thing it's crafting deserves it, the visualization of you watching the craft does bleed away, like, because it's doing its job. Whereas if I'm watching I'll say the first Transformers, because I like the first Transformers,
Transformers.
but I don't think the technology told me a story that needed to be told. Like, you know, like it's just they did all the whiz bang and they did all the technical acumen, and that's great.
Yeah.
Why do they do it? To make action figures punch each other. Like,
I mean, they always use those movies as like showpieces
I know,
when you go into a
but
TV
this
screen.
is using. Well,
Yeah.
no, not.
I
a
think
bunch
this
of
is
CG.
actually, you know, like this should be when you walk into like a Best Buy, like it would be rather than showing you a scene from Transformers, which is the kind of thing that they normally do, or one of those like little cut things. They should show a scene from this movie in the Dolby Atmos.
I actually disagree because that won't sell televisions. It won't because the weight of all of the stuff that we're describing is a slow burn where you only have in retail a specific number of minutes to get people through.
I might be being naive about retail whiz bang, but I guess my point is a little bit more theoretical or a little bit more philosophical in the idea that this is an extraordinary display of technical acumen, and those who can understand that or see it will be amazed. But it won't necessarily hit 95%.
I
of
want
people.
to live in the world where you could sell TVs with this film.
Yeah.
I don't think we do.
It's amazing that this film is available right now.
Yeah, go watch it
on Netflix.
I'm very proud of. We didn't give away anything that's not a crazy spoiler. We didn't give away really any large spoilers. So. Oh, what do you got? You're pointing up in the air.
Oh no! I just remembered that someone did tweet us this week. You asked for the unicorn who didn't have who listened to this podcast and didn't have Netflix.
Oh my God! Did they what?
They did tweet
Who
us.
did it?
It was Kartik, who has emailed us before.
Oh, what up, Kartik?
Yeah, from Prayer, and he was like, "I don't have Netflix," and it was funny because he did that from the Buster Scruggs episode, which the only way to watch Buster Scruggs is by going on Netflix. And I said to him, "Wait a minute, how did you listen to that review without having Netflix?" And he said, "I listen to the review until you get into spoilers, and then I leave it.
Whoa.
If I haven't seen the film."
So, Kartik, this is for you, buddy. We didn't spoil a thing. You can listen to the whole.
Oh my God! And Kartik, you don't have Netflix. You need
Yeah!
to, so hopefully, Kartik, if you are getting a special shout out here, and he's in Paris. Hopefully, he can go see this movie.
You can get Netflix in Paris, right?
Oh, you can absolutely get Netflix in
I think
Paris.
there's that Kanye song, Netflix in Paris.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
Inwards in Paris is Netflix. But I'm hoping he goes to see this in a theater. I'm hoping he goes to see. I'm sure. I've met Kartik. I know Kartik. He will see this film.
Okay, all right. Well, this has been the only podcast about us telling Kartik to go see Roma in the theater. Thank you so much for listening. Shahir, when you are not witnessing the cinematic event of your lifetime that does not include Thanos, where can folks find you?
You can find me holding all my Infinity Stones on my website at www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt. God, all I got is an Infinity Stones joke. When you are not reality stoning your way into the Mexican city of Roma, where can people find you?
You can find me just twisting reality to my own will at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Actually, by the time this comes out as well, on Extra Credits on YouTube, we are doing our new Extra Mythology just came out just in time for the holidays. Guess what we're talking about, Shahir?
What are you talking about?
Krampus.
Oh, Krampus.
The myth and the legend behind Krampus, and I'm saying it like that because Christoph Waltz on the internet taught me that's how you say it.
Okay. You should. Are you guys talking about the film Rare Exports?
No.
Okay.
No. So we just go through all of the sort of the way Krampus was developed and how where he might have come from, and all of the other sort of holiday
mythology
and
the Coca-Cola
monsters.
myth. The Coca-Cola myth.
We don't go that far.
Okay.
This is all almost like Bavarian and like sort of like things surrounding like because the holiday season used to be a dark time. Like it was scary.
I know you guys are excellent at your job.
Yeah.
I will just say, as a recommendation,
Sure.
I would check out the film Rare Export, which is not a movie I love, but is an interesting take on the Krampus mythology.
Rare Export.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rare Exports.
Exports.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie with a very terrifying Santa Claus.
Oh, good. Anywho, St. Nicholas kind of was he was great, and he was also kind of he actually did good stuff. He resurrected children and did a bunch of things. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about movies. Next week, I think we're going to be traversing into the Spider-Verse, Shahir.
I think so, and I'm excited. I again haven't watched the trailer, but I'm excited because I hear very good things about this film.
First trailer, I was like, "Meh." Second trailer, I was like, "Oh yes!" And now, of course, the tirade of just positivity coming at this film. So we'll be talking about that next week. Go check it out before then.
But I got nothing other than don't watch the trailer to Roma.
I didn't.
Yeah, don't.
And it
Don't.
was worth
Do
it.
not- it's an amazing trailer.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal trailer. Just don't watch it.
Yeah.
Alfonso Cuarón knows what he's doing. I hope we know what we're doing when we talk about movies.
Enough.
Watch the movie.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.